So innovation, I guess, is a buzzword and has been a buzzword for quite a while, and nobody gets around it. And everybody needs innovation. So it's basically, I think it's not a discussion whether you need it or not. It's just how do you go about it. So innovation is important, and we are we're one of the largest clinical research organizations worldwide. I think we're number 3 or number 4, depending on the statistics you believe or don't believe. But we're the only European CRO in the top 10. There's nobody else out there. They're all either US based, or most of them, I know more US based, and the other is a Chinese organization. So for us, it has been good to be in Ireland, to grow into that market space, and take that position within our industry. And as head of innovation, I'm definitely interested in monitoring the ecosystem. Now, from our point of view, right? So we're not a startup company. We're a 12 or 13,000 people company, $1.6 billion revenues. We have a slightly different slant of how we look at things than startup companies. But it's important for us to have a working innovation environment ecosystem in Ireland, and I think it's good, but it could be better.
Okay, don't stop there, please.
So we have different collaborations with academic institutions, with startup companies, smaller companies. We are working with the Science Foundation Ireland and other state organizations. One thing that we see, and let's just pick on academic organizations to start, we have a lot of interactions with them. We sponsor activities, we support master thesis, PhD students. What we see is a challenge for us, and we're getting better at that, but different universities have different approaches to that. And most of these candidates, because it's building their professional career, their academic career, they have one target mainly, and that is publication of nice articles like we heard before in Nature and all that kind of stuff, because that will help them to get the next job or to get their PhD awarded. This is not necessarily always in sync with what we expect from the investment that we make into a certain project or a program with students or postdocs even. And it's difficult enough for us to coordinate that with the universities, even within the legal framework. Sometimes it takes us months, 6, 9 months, just to sign a contract to actually be able to do that. If we provide intellectual property, data, computers, software, workspace, and all the university does is drop in a warm body, and it's hard for us to understand why the IP needs to be shared or should sit with the university. So there's a lot of things in that space that need to be discussed and need to be, let's say, I wouldn't say standardized because we're not going to get there, but we need to get a better framework in place and then a better understanding from universities how they can engage with us and we with them, basically.
Okay, very good. So we might come back to that in a minute, but just hold that point. Just maybe like to move on to Deirdre, and as sort of one of the funding agencies from the state, obviously a key part of the innovation ecosystem. I mean, from your point of view, how do you perceive it, and what are the main elements that you see, that are working, and maybe areas that could be improved?
Sure. So we sit between the Department of Education and the third-level institutes, many of which you will be working with already. And our funding comes from the state with some leverage from enterprise. So because it's state funding, obviously there is a remit given to satisfy the needs of the researchers as they develop their careers, to make it sustainable, so that they'll have a sustainable career, and also that we can hit the marks required by companies who are innovating, new startups, and people in houses and incubators. Within that, we found that the research offices and the knowledge transfer offices in universities and institutes of technology have been invaluable. And some of them are stronger than others because they're at a more advanced stage, they've been involved for a longer period of time, and they will perhaps get agreement templates, IP templates and agreements over the line more quickly, just because the funding, the knowledge and the experience is there. So the landscape that we currently exist in is very, there are a lot of crevices in it, and sometimes it works more successfully than others. So we'd like to see, from our perspective, in terms of employment-based schemes and enterprise-based schemes, the co-funds that we work on, that there be as much joined-up thinking as possible, that we can continue to contribute to that, so that we can help research offices, Willie and so on, and the scholars, to build a career and to build pipeline research that's currently quite exciting in Ireland, and I think we're going to become more exciting as well.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, there's a few points there in terms of, maybe, as you said, a number of crevices, varying standards of capability, and maybe bringing everybody up to a standard, if you wish.
Yeah. And I don't think that's the fault of any single university or IT or research performing institute. It's just that things have taken off at different speeds in different areas, in different disciplines as well. And so that's something that getting as many people up to speed as quickly as possible will help. And days like today, other meetings and so on, collaboration, not just in research, but collaboration in terms of running workshops and so on, all help bring those standards.
Okay, thanks Deirdre. Just going to move to Damian, and Damian will have a very different perspective from our two previous contributors. Having spent many years, Damian, helping companies, working with companies, your perspective on the ecosystem as to what we have, what's good, but maybe where we could be doing better.
Well, it struck me from this conversation that actually the ecosystem more and more reminds me of some of the large organizations I work with. So the first thing I'd say is I think at this stage we have an ecosystem. When we started some of these conversations 10, 12 years ago, it was very patchy. I do think there is an ecosystem there. It reminds me a lot of working with large companies where you have all of these different departments and they're all operating in silos. It's still the one organisation, still trying to do the one thing. Marketing doesn't talk to operations doesn't talk to engineering or whatever. And I think the same is true of the ecosystem here. You have the standard agencies, you have the funding agencies, you have the universities, you have the enterprise, and then you have the innovation professionals working in between all of these things. And each of these silos have their own motivation. They're driven by their own metrics. People, as Willie said, what an industry player is looking for, and what it feels is a reasonable contribution. You have to remember that industry is constantly measuring the contribution of its knowledge providers, and then it gets involved with an academic institution who has a different set of values and a different set of priorities. So I think that the same type of silo busting that needs to go on in a large organisation needs to go on here, and that there has to be a little bit more give and take in the overall system. And I think the key to it is that we need to start seeing ourselves as a cohesive whole. We need to start seeing ourselves as an ecosystem, and that ecosystem in and of itself has a purpose. And if it does have a purpose, then each of the different pillars of the ecosystem may need to reposition somewhat to contribute to that purpose. But for me, the biggest issue I think here is, or the biggest point here is, I think the innovation ecosystem and the innovation conversation, this is a mature conversation that we're starting to have now. I think the innovation ecosystem is at an inflection point. And if we do get this right, and nobody else is getting it any better, because the academic institutions are following global best practice on the academic side. The technology transfer is following best practice from their spaces. Everybody is following best practice. Nobody has joined it up. And if we, on this small island, with this small community, can come up with a form of joined up thinking sooner rather than later, that could be an enormous benefit. That could be an enormous unique selling point for this country. And I'm filled with hope that we can, in innovation, you're dealing with competitiveness. And in competitiveness, you don't have to be right. You just have to be better than the other guys. And I think we have an opportunity with our size and with the excellence that we do have in each of these silos. I think we have an opportunity to do something. If we can get together, if we can have more conversations like this, I think we can do something quite spectacular, to be quite honest.
Great. Okay, thanks, David. So maybe Ray, I'd like to come to yourself. Obviously, again, your perspective, you're an investigator, but you've worked a lot with startup companies, and you've heard some pointers there maybe as to maybe some of the disconnects that exist between what companies want and investigators like yourself. So
yeah.
maybe,
yeah, absolutely. And Willie and Deirdre, like in terms of creating the link between enterprise and university, and IRC being right in the middle, providing the instruments for doing that. And as Damian had said, like, I mean, there is all of the building points that are required to sustain this ecosystem and to create innovation going forward and create a pipeline of innovation going forward already exists. And the key word that crosscuts across the three different points that have been made by the panel so far is collaboration. And it's all about it's not that we don't have the expertise, we have it in spades. We are the best little island in Europe. We're great, we absolutely are. And we need to harness that positive energy in a positive way. We need to create a mechanism, and what IRDG are doing, what Dennis is doing, is events like this, and my take off my hat to Dennis in particular, like, you know, for running these type of events, which puts a lot of the expertise that are the building blocks of each ecosystem on panels and on talks in the same room, and we have loads of interesting chats right throughout the day. And that's what will give you the next generation of innovation going forward, is the bleeding of one expertise into another expertise to create some synergy that generates an output that has never been seen before. That's where innovation comes from. And it's not about making the next best tool or the next new technology. It's actually about just advancing research and enterprise and mechanisms and supporting that to grow jobs, to support the economy. And we have been doing that in spades. I mean, last year was a record growth for Enterprise Ireland creating jobs. We are creating new startups absolutely every day of the week out of enterprise research centres, out of university research centres. Technology transfer offices, I believe, are getting very good. I can only speak to what DCU does, and we have a specific remit, and we have this badge that we have to live up to, which is the University of Enterprise. And we go out of our way to forge those links with industry. And our TTO office and Invent is excellent at doing that. We actually negotiate preferential rates with industry just to create more traction in terms of getting the next generation of researchers and startups so that we can license new technologies. And we consistently, for the last 15 years, I think, we've been the top licensing university in Ireland. So and I'm not saying we're the best at absolutely everything. We're not. Like, I'm not that big-headed. I mean, Trinity does some great work. We've had a great talk just prior to here. And the same thing applies to UCD and the other universities on the island of Ireland. But we just need to leverage the best practice, as Damian had said. Like, I mean, so if we do just the engagement with industry better, then get all universities to come to the stage of that. Whereas if Trinity do some other engagement better, then let DCU catch up with them there. But to leverage best practice right across the ecosystem and collaborate. It's all about collaboration going forward. I mean, I think we have all the building blocks. We are going in the right direction. And as Damian said, we're on the cusp of a massive change, I think, in innovation right now. And with directed, targeted push, and it wouldn't take an awful lot, I think we're going to see exponential growth in innovation over the next short to medium term, 3 to 5 years.
Right. I mean, thanks, Ray, for that. I mean, what it seems to be coming out, and I agree totally, that Ireland has come a heck of a long way in the last 10, 20 years. In fact, our own organisation, IRDG, is 25 years old this year. When it was founded by business people because there were no incentives, literally no incentives for research and innovation in industry in Ireland. Today, you know, and we got some flavour of it, there's a whole plethora of incentives, and maybe one of the challenges for people in business, whether it's a startup or an SME or a multinational, is trying to make sense of that ecosystem. it's a little bit complex for a country of 4.5 million people, it seems to me. I'm just interested, how can we, I won't say simplify it, but how do we bring it all together? Is that a function of government, or is it a function of business people, or is it a function of bringing these various elements of the ecosystem together? Because it's very easy to point to government and say, oh, somebody in government should sort all this out for us. I don't think that's necessarily the answer. So how do we make what we have better?
Well, I can kick that off and we can go back that way again, and I'll be brief. I think it's creating a coalition of the willing, you know, and Damian used a term we were chatting earlier on of rainmakers, people that will just make things happen. And I think a lot of what's of the people that are on this panel are actually rainmakers in their own right, and we just need more of that. We need facilities like what RDG is doing with the Research and Innovation Conference, with the National Health Expo, and putting these synergetic possibilities, situations in place where we can foster growth. But we need support from all other aspects of so I'll do what I can from my aspect of the ecosystem, and we need other people to play their parts as well.
Okay.
Just to come in there, obviously we want to facilitate people as far as possible, you know, and support them in their applications and getting the word out there, showing them how to apply and so on, just that, even at that level. The problem with us, saying we're one of the main funders on the island, is that on the enterprise team, there are 2 of us, so I'm 50% of it, you know, so we also, while we'd love to do everything we possibly can, we also need the support of the rest of the ecosystem to push for further funding, and the more that happens, the more we'll be available to do what we want to do as well. So I think, again, it's like lifting all boats. The more we join together and work together, the more everyone benefits, and we'll be able to do the work in areas that at the moment we just simply don't have the time, and there's just 2 of us. And there are other larger funders on the island, obviously, but I know that they too would, you know, have the same pleas for further funding as well.
Okay, so funding.
I think a big part of it is the maturity of the conversation. And the conversation, I think, you mentioned it earlier, we were talking 10, 15 years ago about what is innovation and trying to get that message across to people. And I think a lot of work now has been done as what is the innovation ecosystem, what are all the elements. I think we're starting to move away from the what is it conversation to, now that we have it, how do we make it better, how do we make it right. So I think we're moving from the establishment phase to a phase of optimization. And I think you're right, Dennis. I think the biggest thing is we need to start the conversation about what exactly, you know, who are we serving here? And where is this thing going? And where do we need to go? And we go into organizations and we help organizations look to the future. I think we need to look at ourselves and look to our future, and we need to start thinking strategically. I think we need to start having a conversation about what are we trying to achieve here? Where is this going? And we need to show leadership in this. So I think the more of the events like this, and more people step up and be counted and get this conversation going and build on this conversation, I think it will start to self-fulfill. It'll start to move into how do we work better together, and how do we better serve the audience that we're here to serve.
Okay, Willie, I might just turn it a little bit on yourself, because I suspect from the company you work with and your own background that you've seen how ecosystems work in other countries as well. And are there things that we should be doing that maybe others are doing better?
I'm not sure that I would say others do it better. I think it doesn't matter whether I'm from Germany, but I live in Tipperary, Ireland, so I'm Irish. My wife's claims, so I gotta take that. And I spent a lot of time in the US as well. I think the one thing is probably what is there in abundance is money. So there's more funding, there's just more volume, more money available. There's also more people applying for the money, right? We need to put that into context. What I'm wondering is, it's just like we agreed before and we discussed here is there's still an abundance of information out there, but it's difficult to find. And while I always claim Google knows everything, and I probably can find anything I want to find, if I put enough effort into it, I can. It probably would be good to have a place to go to where basically all of this stuff would be available. Probably like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo kind of platform where information from universities, from agencies, from state agencies, from private investors, from multinationals would be available for everyone to find out. Right now, I think it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time goes by to really find the right information for everybody's specific situation, because not everyone is looking for the same thing at the same time. But so I think Ireland isn't doing any worse than anyone else. I think actually it's actually doing really well. But as we said earlier, there's more to be done.
Very good. I think that's a very good suggestion. I think in terms of having somewhere to go, a platform, an entry point, which sort of guides you through maybe the early stages and points you in the right direction. Very good. So, I mean, I think. Again, we're, I suppose, coming towards the end of the day, so there's a 5-minute, that's the first one for me today now, okay? So, we're coming towards the end of the day, and I suppose, in terms of maybe finishing on a high note for our audience, what sort of advice, what would you say to an SME, a startup, or even a larger company, Irish, how can they, what we have currently, where do they go? Where would they start to engage with the, best start with engaging with the ecosystem that we have?
We've only 5 minutes left.
It's a minute for you, okay?
Okay, I'll be brief. I'm meeting smart people all day, every day. It's not that we don't have smart students, it's not that we don't have smart enterprise, smart companies, we don't have foreign direct investment, we don't have multinationals, we don't have SMEs, we have all of it in spades. And it's about leveraging that in the best way possible. And I think we're doing some really good things. And in terms of starting, for my 1 minute, what I'd say is, pick up the phone and ring me. Have a conversation. And if it's got to do with my space, I mean, I am talking to people for free, all day, well, not all day, every day, but a lot. I meet in the Helix for cups of coffee like 10, 20 times a week for free, and I give away free advice. And there's I'm not unique, there's lots of academics that are like that, who will give 5 minutes, 10 minutes to have a conversation with you and just point you in the right direction, and it's for free. And there's lots of other people like that, and I think if you just harness on all the things you can do for free, you'd be surprised what you can get done, including getting things built, or a long way towards being built, for free.
I'd like to echo that while there's just 2 of us on our team, that the more people who come to us, to talk to us, or we go to them, the better. Especially people, smaller companies who may have pieces of research going on, and they're looking to create a more coherent line in research for themselves, but they don't know what to do next. They have an EI voucher, whatever. They don't know what to do next. To come and talk to us. We may, like Chris from TCD I said earlier, TCD may not be the best place for them, but we can also help to direct you for where you can go next. So I think opening up is really key to that.
What about where you start? In looking at the larger companies, in particular the overseas companies here, the thing that excites me most, especially if we can as an ecosystem show more leadership and build more bridges, is we've been talking about it for years, this idea that we've the top ICT companies, we've got the top pharma companies, we've got the top medical device companies. We're moving into a world, and a lot of the conversation today has been about digitization and what that actually means. We're moving into a world where everything's about to change. So mashups between medical device companies and insurance companies on new business models, mashups between ICT companies and energy companies. This is going to be an enormous feature of innovation in the next decade, and we should be absolutely at the hub of that on a global basis. And as soon as we start to get some, and I know there's an enormous amount of great work happening in all sorts of different places on this, but as soon as we start to get that into our public consciousness, as soon as we start to get some traction in that, I think innovation is going to explode in this country, and that all this uniqueness that we talked about, I think we're on the cusp of tapping into it. And I think that the big thing is, I think watch this space. I think it's going to be incredible.
Sorry.
Yes.